Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Today is the 22nd of December, episode number 58 of Daily Global Insight with Sree and Sree. And I would like to welcome our guest, Sridhar Chityalaji. Sridharji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskaram and good morning to everybody.
Sir, we have a lot of things to discuss today. First off, let us take a look at the details of the stimulus deal that was passed by the US Congress and Senate yesterday, and a few salient points perhaps you can touch upon. And I have a few specific questions on why the stimulus deal, which is meant for US, is being used to fling money around to many countries around the world. Sir, take it away, please.
Great. Thank you so much. I think the much awaited deal, which is the $900 billion deal, is now done. The $900 billion deal came with another $1.4 trillion to effectively fund the government till September 30th. Nancy Pelosi has gone on to say that there would be another stimulus coming in when Mr. Biden, who is currently the president-elect, comes into the office. The two principal objections that was raised, which caused the delay of the budget, namely the business insurance protection, and the second, which is funding some of the local governments and administration, there seems to have been a compromise, which begs the question, why was this all delayed? Because if they were the two holding points. There is no fundamental change to what we have outlined in the earlier programs, namely the $300 million PPP program for the small business. Then the $600 allowance, which Steve Mnuchin said will hit people's accounts early next week in time. And then it also includes the $300 for all dependents, including people who are in college and so on. It also includes the unemployment insurance extension, the $300. That makes up another $200 to $283 million. Then there is a combination of little things which is directly related to US. One is COVID, $10 billion or $14 billion for COVID testing. Then you have close to $85 billion for various kind of programs to support hospitals and front-end healthcare workers and so on. There is also a $15 billion for the airline. Plus, there is programs to support schools and so on as kids come back and new rules come into effect as a result of the COVID. So this is the broad architecture, which is consistent with what they have been debating. The 1.4 trillion perhaps is to make sure that there is enough time window to fund the government, given that the transition has not occurred, the elections are being contested, and nothing will happen till January 20th, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that there is still, for discussion. So they seem to have worked that out, which is what you call business as usual core governmental programs to run the administration. What's also relevant is they did not discuss this $439 billion Fed rollout, which got sent back to Treasury because they're not going to be sent before December 31st. In all, overall, I would say, rather than a lose-lose, it's a win-win. Some money is kind of getting in. But there's much questions to be answered, whether Mr. Biden takes over and Janet Yellen comes in as is current direction, or whether Mr. Trump, reverses the current trend, right? So there's much to be kind of discussed. The fact that the markets are lukewarm in terms of responses is a reflection that of the two things. One is the primary issue is this new COVID variant that has come from UK, but more importantly, how that is going to be responded and whether the stimulus is adequate. They keep referring to two categories of people, the 9 million people who are now below poverty line, how they're going to be addressed. And the second one that is likely to be, is this 12 million illegal people. Now, as you know, the Supreme Court has exceeded and passed that they will not form part of the census, right? Because that was the contention between the two sides. So I've given you a map of what the outlay is. It is still being digested. It is a 5,580-page document, which people have to absorb in 6 hours to pass this budget.
Some of the things that stand out for me, sir, are a $700 million to Sudan. Whether it is an aid or loan, I don't know. Another $15 million to Pakistan for democracy, and a further $10 million to Pakistan for gender programs. There's also vague statements such as $600 for some Americans. Who are these some Americans? What blows my mind is the stimulus is supposed to be for American citizens, and why is the government then splaying money around to Sudan and to Pakistan? After all, this is taxpayer money. It is going to we have to pay it sometime down the future. And what exactly is the government thinking? This pork spending, where you keep on attaching some vested interest requests into a bigger bill, this has got to stop. Anyway, this is just my rant, sir. Let's move on to what is happening with COVID, and then we'll go to global topics, politics after that. So on COVID, it's called what, B117 now, the new strain that is going around in United Kingdom. So there are some reports in media that it originated from Sydney, Australia. I don't know how true they are. I have no idea whether it is very verifiable or not. But clearly, this seems to have shown up its face in many places. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think it's quite intriguing, which is, that it originated from, in Sydney, in Australia. There are all kinds of rumors that fly around, and people make comments and statements. So I don't want to, comment not knowing the facts and not being established. The fact is that this variant was discovered. The fact is that it rapidly expands. It seems to be different from the current kind of strains of the virus. So immediately it was communicated over the weekend by the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. So most of the countries have reacted and responded to that. The medical community have reacted and responded as well, which is to state that the current vaccine programs, based on what they have seen as an initial, remember that we are only on Tuesday and this was discovered over the weekend, they feel it is quite adequate to deal with the program. But certainly it is causing a tremendous concern amongst the minds of everyone because of the rapidity or the rate of contraction or the rate of absorption of this virus and the spreading of the disease.
Sir, one important addition to what you just said, I have learned from reliable sources in England that Boris Johnson will not be going for the Republic Day parade function in India on January 26th. That is as of today, as things stand today. It could change, but this is what I have reliably learned. I just wanted to share that thought. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, sir, is the looks like the B117 also has surfaced in other countries. It is not just United Kingdom, isn't it?
Well, I think the Asia seems to be now engulfed in this wave. We have been covering this topic, by way of daily updates. Almost every country: Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Thailand, Myanmar, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. Almost every country is now reporting. Hong Kong has reported a new province adjacent to Wuhan. I think in China is reporting cases. I think it's 3 provinces or 3 states or 3 provinces have been encircled and kind of locked down because of the rising, corona the COVID cases even in China. The details are a bit sketchy, but in Asia, people are reporting that there seems to be new cases that is emerging in China as well. Okay, so whether in the case of Japan, many countries have now put a ban around travel bans around Japan to UK in and out. In fact, Japan has even put a transit ban. That is, those who have spent 6 hours in UK airport, they need to come and go through the kind of the testing process, but they could be in a much more significant kind of quarantine. As a result, most of these countries, including India, has put a travel ban in and out till December 31st. The only two countries which have made an exception to this rule are Australia and UK, right? Which is United States. Australia and United States have not placed any ban. They say that the quarantine procedures can take care. So, in terms of your specific question, whether these same traces have been observed, the answer is yes. In Asia as well, they have. There's also, I think, either in Vietnam or Thailand, they have observed a specific case, which is they are tracing the origin to some wet market. This new strain of virus, which they have picked up in that respective country. So I think again, we are grouping in the dark in terms of the cause and the trigger. But based on all the anecdotal evidence, it seems to point out that the cause is not known, but it is a new strain and it is growing at a much more rapid rate relative to the rest. Then when you look at the stats around the world, they don't, either the stats are fudged or the stats are delayed. The numbers just, I spent an hour with one of the leading doctors in US of a major hospital here, and what they're saying is that the data is still, a little bit sketchy. And second, it seems to be like a moving target. So they're not able to get their hands around, the whole, what are the kind of specific stains and what is the molecular structure of the specific virus, what is kind of triggering this explosive implosion. So there's still, a lot of discovery process that needs to evolve, but they are applying these vaccine principles based on what they have seen. The data ranges from 40,000 to 45,000 to 60,000 initial tests that they've conducted using the vaccines. So I think there's a lot more to be done. We expect, I think, first quarter, second quarter to be turbulent as we evolve. What does it say that there's not the third category that pops up in January after Christmas? We don't know.
Yes, indeed, there are lots of unknowns. And let's take a look at the global news now. An interesting development, not long ago, Pakistanis, even the lawmakers were demanding action against French, especially against French president for his moves on, trying to tighten some of the laws around what was happening in and around France. And then today, according to the social media, and these have been retweeted by some reliable sources, so I'm going to read out what I've read, that the French have signed a deal with them. France and Pakistan have signed the first agreement as part of the debt service suspension initiative taken by the G20 creditor countries and Paris Club. Because of this, about $1.8 billion debt to Pakistan has been rescheduled. You may remember that EU has done several such things with Greece, with Italy, with Spain. So this is not something new. When the country cannot afford to pay, when they are not even able to make their interest payments, leave alone principal, the creditor doesn't have much of a choice in terms of what they can and what they cannot demand. After all, you can't go and occupy the land for non-payment of loans. So that has still not been figured out in the clauses, I guess. Sridharji, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think you have, in many ways, you have responded to the question. It's a broad restructuring of the debt program that G20 has to do with the countries. This has been in discussion, almost for, close to, it started with about 700 million. Now it has probably enveloped itself into a 1.2 billion program. I'm sure that, few countries in G20 raised the issue, which is to say, if you want to, be transparent and pull certain nations, then it's important that the programs are viewed as consistent across all the nations. By the way, both Vietnam and Indonesia have been also raising questions to G20 to look at the lending programs for the second and third tier economies to be much more palatable, so that the recovery from these countries can be faster post COVID situation. So I would kind of look at this restructuring of the deal with Pakistan, the 1.2 trillion, $1.2 billion or $1.4 billion, as you say. By the way, as another kind of a program that is done adjacent to the other programs.
Thank you, sir. And looks like China's spat with Australia is beginning to pinch them more. Now there is news emerging of power cuts being imposed across various Chinese cities because they are running low on coal imports, which they used to do always from Australia. Where do you see this thing going? Is China trying to line up some other vendor? After all, China has problems in terms of food production. They don't have any cows. They don't have many animals, in fact. So that's another challenge. Now you're talking about basic problems like power not being made available 24/7. Where do you think China is headed, sir? What are, these are all some things new. We don't know if 117 also is afflicting China. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think my response to your question would be China has enormous amount of muscle power, has enormous amount of power to impose its will on the people. What China is saying that it will not yield to the Australian demands of apology with regard to the soldier. It would not yield to some of the other measures that Scott Morrison has put in place in response to Chinese kind of agenda within Australia, including defense, right? Including the defense. So that is one of the reasons why that China is saying, okay, what am I going to do? Australia is a mining economy, right? Australia is reliant on, its coal, iron ore, as well as its rich uranium deposits. Besides energy, it's also an oil exporter, right? So these are the big energy, and mining is powers Australian exports and economy. So what China is saying, which is typically the way, is you are a small economy, I have the capacity, I'm going to hurt you, right? So which is to say, I can withstand the pain, and my people will put up with it if you don't toe the line. So the question is, who is going to blink? Is China going to blink, or Australia going to blink? So, or is some heavy concessions is going to be, demanded? This is where Australia, for the first time, has been looking outside China, and they deals with India, they deals with Japan, and also their deals with ASEAN. And they may also do some more stuff with Indonesia, and to see how they can soften the cushion without yielding to this significant imposition that is being made by the Chinese.
So interesting times again as to how this is also going to play out. But we have not heard about B117 instances from China yet, have we?
No, we have not. We have not. By the way, I just stand corrected. I think it's more than 12 to 14 provinces which are affected by virus, rather than 3 that I mentioned. So 3 is old. It now seems to have spread. That's the breaking news. So we'll never get any transparent information from China. It'll only trickle feed. For example, even this COVID itself. Now you get to know that WHO knew, world knew, everybody knew, but everybody didn't know either.
So, as a long-term replacement for coal, where do you see the alternatives? What do you think should be the alternatives? I mean, there is always what will be the alternatives. That could be more coal, but what do you think should be the alternatives?
I think India is demonstrating that already, which is namely that the nuclear energy is one factor that people looked at. Now we're all moving to this what you call alternate sources of energy, or green energy, which is your solar and your wind, as well as other fuels. Seems to be the way it is going. India has demonstrated it is one of the largest producers of solar. Australia has enormous, it's a huge desert and, has enormous types of capabilities. But of course, it is driven by distances and space and so on and so forth. But Australia will go down that specific. Australia doesn't need, I mean, it's energy sufficient in many ways. The problem that Australia faces, specifically if you ask the question, is around capital, because you require huge amount of capital to continue to drive the program, and you need to have a huge consumer base, which Australia doesn't have. So capital and consumer base may drive it to continue to look at the traditional, which is traditional forms of energy. So where I see is that India has demonstrated, I am told, I don't know the unit price, but they have again further dipped the unit price, which used to be, $1, which used to be $10 to $11, has come to $7 per unit. Now it's almost less than $2 per unit of the energy produced from the alternate sources. One of the largest solar plants is also in the United States. If you take Europe, Europe is very big in the wind energy. They have huge wind energy farms in Scandinavia, as well as in some of the German, as well as Holland. So I think that the world will move towards they're less reliant on coal, more on hydro and alternate fuels.
Thank you, sir. With that, our program comes to an end. If there's anything you would like to add, sir, because I think we are at the end of our program today.
No, I think the only observation that I would make to your earlier point is that the Sudan deal, which, all this, that is why it is, it's clearing the swamp, is what President Trump has said. Sudan, if you remember, did a deal with Israel, right? The peace deal was done. So there must be some amount of aid. So the quid pro quo is, Democrats have a soft corner for Pakistan, and as you know that there is a large representation of their membership within the party. So it's, these things go as a barter system. Whether you actually take a stimulus and allocate the capital is very, very contentious issue, and the fact that both the sides have agreed makes it even more alarming.
Well, the last word has not been said about this, and I expect people writing to their congressmen and senators. If they don't, they ought to, because these are some of the things that are pressing needs when the average American is going penniless and foodless, and they have been constrained to stay in their homes, and now you are trying to spread these largesse around the world. For God's sake, if you want to do it under a separate bill. So this pork attachment, this is something that I am vehemently opposed to, but that's just me. Thank you very much, Sridharji, and we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same spots. Namaskar.
Thank you and namaskar ji.